The first thing we did back in April last year was create our strategic direction, and our vision is to have efficient care for cancer patients, and the number one improvement priority we had was to have more focus on patients. I think the team felt a bit like a data entry team when I came into post, and they wanted to be more involved with the patients' pathways. So from a team perspective, I think they're happier that they've got that involvement with the patients now. Yeah, so I was appointed in April 2022, and one of the biggest problems at the time was that we had the increasing 62-day backlog, which in terms of cancer is the number of patients waiting longer than 62 days for their first treatment. And at the time the process was to track patients weekly, so the team would work through their PTL and just send an email off to the service lines. But when you've only got 62 days to get patients from referral to treatment, I thought that it was important to have more rigour and more focus around that process. So I worked with the team in our forum meetings and collaborated with them to kind of define our daily tracking process. We worked with the performance information team, and they built some business intelligence into our PTL so that in our tracking comments we could assign a responsibility to whoever was responsible for the patient's care at a certain point in their pathway. So it could be a colorectal patient, but they might need an imaging scan, so we would apply a code that assigns that patient to imaging rather than colorectal. And the way that works is just whenever the patient needs to get to the next step of their pathway, we just allocate the next code and the patient just keeps flowing through their pathway. And by reviewing that on a daily basis, we've managed to get the patients through their pathway faster. And the other part of that process is the cancer huddle, which we implemented. So when I came into post, there was an existing cancer huddle, but it only looked at the patients who were long waiters already, so patients who had breached their target. And I thought it was really important to make sure that patients were being reviewed from referral receipt to try and prevent them breaching in the first place. But we track about 2,500 patients at once, so we didn't want to bring all of them into the huddle every day. So we made sure that we've only brought patients into the huddle where they've got an outstanding action and they've been assigned to a service line for 2 or more days. So we're kind of talking about 300, 350 patients a day in the huddle. So it still takes quite some time, but I think, like I said before, that rigour and focus is really needed to make sure these patients get through their pathway as quickly as possible.
Roughly between 300 to 600 patients, so on a Monday it tends to be more busy because of the weekend, patients sort of tip over. So today, for example, there was 625 patients, but then at the end of last week there was 370 patients, so it can vary between those amount of patients. Again, overall I think it's a really good process. I mean, the process was implemented just before I started. I've been doing this since February now, and you know, I've really got stuck into it, and again, doing it every day, I just know what patients I'm looking at, know what I need to do to escalate and action on those patients. So overall I think it's a really good process for our patients.
For patients, I think it's just getting them through their pathway as quickly as possible. We can see the 62-day backlog reducing, so we were up at around 300 patients, and now we're down to about 160 patients, so that is reducing. Our trajectory is to get to 152 patients by March 2024, and we're on target to do that. So yeah, definitely positive for patients.
Daily tracking, I personally feel, is better. It feels like you have, as a coordinator, more control over the patients that you are dealing with. Instead of sending a PTL out once a week, you're checking it daily. You're putting patients to the next step a lot quicker than you would have before. So it just feels like there's more patient focus, and that the patient is the most important person in that process. So I feel proud to be a cancer pathway coordinator in the cancer services team. A lot of patients don't even know we exist, so we're kind of behind the scenes, doing our best, putting them patients first every day, and just pushing them through their pathway to make sure they get what they need when they need in a timely fashion.